Hey, and good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. We are back here tonight with another exciting Incredicon, not Incredicon, IncrediChat. We haven't done one in a little bit of time, but tonight is going to be pretty cool. I see some people are already watching with us. So please, as we're watching, throw in your questions. But we're going to get right into it tonight. We're excited to have a cool guest star tonight. Voice actress. And we're going to hear her story, and she does some other cool things. Craig of the Creek, the all new Tiny Toons Looniversity. So let's welcome to tonight's IncrediChat, Ashleigh Hairston. Ashleigh, welcome.
Hello, hello. Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Listen, thank you for coming and doing this tonight. I'm excited to talk to you just about some of the stuff that you've been doing. So briefly, we were talking about we were talking about your journey into animation, but I know your journey doesn't start with animation. And just again, quickly, I know a lot of people are familiar with you already, from definitely from Craig of the Creek and this assignment of this announcement of this other little show that's coming on, which will briefly.
What show? I have no idea what you're talking about.
So, but I guess the best thing to do is tell us a little bit about yourself, your career. How did you get into showbiz? Like what led you to showbiz?
Oh my gosh, where to even begin? Well, I guess I'll start from do you want the long version or the very abridged, Los Angeles version?
Well, you know what? We occasionally do have some young people watching this who do have, like I was sharing with you, I work in a high school.
Yeah.
Sometimes some young people do watch this, so I mean, it's always good to know that journey.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll give you the quick long version. So yeah, I've always wanted to be an actor. That was my dream. Always wanted to move to New York City and do theater. That was like my biggest, before I even knew what New York was like or what New York City was even, I wanted to be in New York and do Broadway and do theater. And so ever since I was young, I grew up in a church, my dad's a pastor. I grew up in church, and I would perform in all of our church plays all of the time. And then as soon as I got into school, I started doing theater and performing in our comedy troupes and stuff. And so when I had the opportunity to go to school, to college, I was like, ooh, I want to major in acting because that's, of course, what I wanted to do with my life. And so, yeah, I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I'm from Seattle originally. So I moved from Washington State to Washington, D.C., across the country, and majored in theater arts. And that just got me one step closer to New York City. So after I graduated, I would travel up to New York City and take the Chinatown bus, which was $20. And I would just get on the bus and go up on the weekends and do background work or extra work in anything. Just because I was like, that's getting me closer. That's getting me closer. And then my dream was to, live in New York. So I started planning it out, and I was like, well, I'm going to move to New York City. I'm going to find a roommate. I'm going to become a waitress by day and a theater performer by night. And I tried to move there for 2 years and it didn't work. Both times it was too expensive, or we didn't get approved for an apartment. We didn't have enough money. It was just a lot of back and forth. And so, I did that for 2 years. And then finally I was like, well, you know what? Maybe New York is not in the cards after all. And so I started to rethink what everyone used to tell me. Sorry, there's an email coming through. Everyone was always like, if you want to, be an actor on television, you got to go to New York first. Go to New York, and then LA will call you, whatever that's supposed to mean. And so I was like, I have to go to New York first. But after trying for 2 years, I was like, well, maybe it's not. Maybe everybody's wrong. Maybe I just got to go to LA then instead, because things don't seem to be working out for me in New York City. And so the third summer after I graduated, I was like, well, let me see who I know in LA. So I reached out to a friend. She, my one friend that I knew in Los Angeles, and she surprisingly needed a roommate. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll do this. We started looking up apartments on Craigslist and found one immediately and got approved immediately, had the money, saved up, and moved to Los Angeles just like that. Sorry, another email's coming in. So then, yeah. What's that?
The world of technology.
I know, I apologize in advance. So 2012 is when I moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. And I moved right into Hollywood because I was like, ooh, this is perfect. I'll be right in the heart of Hollywood, which was a nightmare, but perfect also. Literally the second day that I got to LA, my best friend and I were walking up and down the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, and we came across I.O. West Theater, which is an improv comedy theater that started out in Chicago. And I went inside, and they just happened to be having an intro to improv class.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, and I think for people who are watching this, because somebody wanting to work in animation and some people are already commenting, a lot of the things, a lot of people who we've talked to voice actor wise, like we've had Bob Bergen on, and a couple other folks, and it's always it's always about the improv.
It's so important, and we'll probably get to that in a little bit, but yeah, changed my life immediately. I took the class and I was like, oh my God, this is what I was supposed to be doing all along. What have I been doing majoring in dramatic? Well, I could still do drama, and I love it so much, but I am a silly goose, I found my people amongst the improv, comedy world, and sketch too. So I started out doing improv and immediately got immersed in the world of improv and started taking classes. I started working at that theater on the weekends. I was a cocktail waitress. I was taking classes at night. I was interning there during the day. And that just took up my whole life. And yeah, improv is where it started. And then I got on a sketch team there and started performing sketch comedy. That's where I started learning about characters and developing characters. And then I was performing at iOS for 3 years. Then I moved to UCB Theater. Are you familiar with that, Mike?
I have not heard of that.
Oh, okay. There's a theater called the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. There's one in New York City.
When you say upright, now
yes. So yes, the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater started in New York. Then they had one in Los Angeles. So I started to do the one in Los Angeles. I started taking classes. I got a scholarship. I started performing there. I auditioned and got on a mod team, which is their version of sketch teams. And that took me for, oh my gosh, 4 years. I was on a team there. Yeah, 4 years. Oh my gosh. And there is where I got all of my performance experience, learning how to write for myself. I took the improv and sketch program there. This is all important because it led me and taught me and provided the foundation for what I'm doing currently in animation, working in animation now. So yeah, improv, sketch comedy, that's where I started to learn how to write characters for myself. As a performer there, they would, we would be in showcases. So Nickelodeon once was looking for character performers to bring in for auditions.
You guys perform then? Like Nickelodeon? Yep. Oh, interesting.
All the time. Yeah. We had a lot of industry that would come through and pull, just to scout out talent and characters and all that stuff. And so it was really beneficial to perform at that theater because you would always have these opportunities, like Nickelodeon coming out. And then they would bring us in for auditions and stuff. So it was great. Then I did the Cvs Diversity Showcase, which is a showcase here that a lot of networks, they have their own showcases here in LA. Like CBS has one, NBC has one, ABC has a showcase. And this is basically like thousands of people audition all over the country. And for CBS, it's a sketch comedy showcase. And ours, it's like a week of shows. You rehearse for months leading up to it. But during that process, it's like a boot camp for writing and performing, because you're constantly doing sketches and writing for yourself. And so I did that twice, Mike. First time as a performer, second time as a writer. And that's where I learned how to write. And during that time, 2018, is when I booked my first voiceover role.
And the first voiceover role you did was Avengers. Yep.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yes, so you're in the MCU in a sense.
I know. So that was wild, because I was like, this is wild. This is my first. So for voiceover, I never imagined I'd be in this voiceover animation world. My goal was always to do acting, but then people, as I was performing, would always, be like, "Oh my God, you have such a unique voice. You have such a cool voice. You should do voiceovers. Do you do voiceovers?" And I'm like, "No, I don't do voiceovers. I don't like my voice." I didn't used to. You like hear yourself on the phone, or like hear yourself, back. You're like, ugh. Sounds so, nasally or something.
No, I completely relate to that, even doing this. But
exactly, yeah.
I don't hear myself, and I watch this, and I'm like, I hear myself now.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I want to just go back a little bit. So you were doing all this sketch comedy with the improv, and I just want to go back, because you're saying that they had at Upright Citizens Brigade like teams and stuff, right? So I guess a little bit of that process too. Like, you found probably people that you worked really, really well with, and were able, even like you talk about character development and storytelling, you were able, to maybe find one or two different partners that you guys can play off of. And when like a Nickelodeon would come, would they be looking for just individuals like yourself, or are they looking for like that duo or that trio who really had that chemistry?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. They would have, like, for the showcases that they would do, if you were like a team, you could perform. But a lot of times it was just performers who were on teams, and you would come in with your own batch of characters and perform them for them. And then, they would reach out if they ever thought, it's just about exposure, basically. It's like, oh, what about that one girl who came in and do that weird old granny character? She might be a person to come in and bring in. She might be a good voice for blah, blah, blah down the road, series. And so it was just great exposure, because you give them your headshot and resume, all that stuff. And it was great. But working on teams there, it was just perfect, because you learn so much. You do create these relationships and these this bond with like your fellow performers. At UCB, you would have 6 writers and 6 actors on the team that would form a team. And the writers would write for the performers, obviously, but the performers would pitch character ideas to the writers. And so you're all constantly working in collaboration to put together a show at the end of the month. And then, lots of people would come and watch that, and also scout out talent there and performers, Yeah. Do you hear those crickets? Did you hear those crickets?
It's in my yard.
Oh my goodness.
It
was perfectly timed after I finished the sentence, and it was like,
so, listening. So you're writing story, creating characters, and then also performing these characters. So, and I know for Craig of the Creek, for instance, you do work on some story stuff. So exactly. How does that work? Someone just throw crickets. LOL. It's nature. It's not summer.
Beautiful.
But like Craig of the Creek, wearing those multiple hats. How does that work from the creative written aspects of things to then the performance thing? Because as well as being a part of the cast, like you, and I guess this also goes with that chemistry of the teams. And again, and I know some people have talked about Tiny Toons on here already. I want to get to that too. I know like animation at this point in time, and I don't know what the setup for Craig of the Creek was, or even for this new Tiny Toons. But back in the early days of animation, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, the original iteration of Tiny Toons, everybody sat together in the booth. I know nowadays people just go in and record their lines, and then they never even meet them. So for Craig of the Creek, for instance, since you wear multiple hats, how does it work on that show?
Yeah, so I started out on Craig of the Creek as a voice actor. So Craig of the Creek was the second job that I booked as a voice actor. And I was, just going in for the records to do my bits and then leave. But during that time, I just, started to become friends with the story editor at the time, Jeff Trammell, and Matt and Ben, the creators of Craig of the Creek. And just the staff, the crew really, there. Everyone was so friendly and so nice. And I became friends with Jeff on Facebook. And one day I just posted that I was looking for writing jobs because I was tired of auditioning and not being paid, because you don't get paid to audition. And I was like, why does everybody else have jobs and not me? I can be writing as well. And so I posted on Facebook that I was looking for writing jobs. And I just, said all of my experience and what I was looking for and all that stuff. Someone saw that post. I got an email from Cartoon Network that said, hey, we heard you're looking for writing jobs. And I was like, what the heck? Where did this come from? And I was like, yes. They were like, would you like to come in and sit in on a room? And I was like, of course. Didn't know what that meant, but I didn't tell them that, of course. And I met up with my friend, actually, she was a former director of mine on that team at UCB. And she was also a writer on the Powerpuff Girls. And so I met up with her because I knew she had animation writing experience, and I had forged a friendship with her from performance. Her name's Haley Mancini. And I you should reach out to her to have on the show too one day. She's got lots of experience. Yeah. But yeah, so I reached out to her and I was like, what do I do? They asked if I wanted to come and sit in on a room. What does that mean? And she was like, you'll be fine. You have experience, you know how to pitch characters, you know how to write, you know how to write jokes, you know how to, come up with this stuff. So you'll be fine. So I went in. I did sit in. It was great. It was so friendly, such a warm, the best writer's room environment I've ever had. And they just kept inviting me back. I started out as freelance, and I was just writing at the time. And then in January 2020, they brought me on as a full-time staff writer. So I was able to, continue being Ren, and that's my character that I play on Craig of the Creek, and then also be in the writer's room. And so I was writing on Craig of the Creek all throughout pandemic.
Well, I was just going to say, because that must have been really interesting too, because animation is like one of the only things in showbiz that didn't really slow down, because a lot of people were able to work from home. So obviously in that case,
it picked up. Yeah, I got tons of work because animation kept going. Animation just blew up, really. So I was able to work on multiple projects all throughout pandemic. Thank God. Feel very fortunate for that. I pivoted into writing for animation right at the perfect time. So it's been great. And then we had to record from home. So that was, not as fun because we couldn't do our group records anymore. But I set up a nice.
Originally, they were doing group records when you were all going.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then it turned into my closet. I had to transform it into my booth. Ordered a bunch of stuff on Amazon and got some LED lights. and got to work, got in the booth. But yeah, so for Craig of the Creek, we're back in studio now.
Gotcha.
So that's great. But yeah, it was really fun being able to write for my character. Then I realized how difficult it was because she knows everything about science and I know nothing about science. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is
Well,
actually difficult.
that's what I was going to ask you. So now, writing for your own character, did you? And I
Mm-hmm.
guess you kind of answered it now, or did you latch on to somebody else's character? Because
Mm-hmm.
different writers have different characters they really latch onto. And I mean,
Yeah,
of course, you have this character in your heart that you play, but
I
you don't
know.
really connect to this other character to put words in their mouth. Did something like that happen with you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really weird. I was like putting pressure on myself because then sometimes I'd write stuff and I'd be like, why did I write this? This is difficult. I'd get in the booth and I'll be like, what? I couldn't think of easier way to say this. But yeah, I mean, I fell in love with the whole cast writing for Craig, just because I relate so much to Craig and his family, the Williams family, and his mom, her character went to Howard University,
Mhm.
just like mine. And I also had, older siblings. And so, yeah, it was just, and their families from Maryland. And I went to school in the DMV. So I was very familiar with that. So I fell in love with writing for all of those characters. And then Ren was just like the icing on the cake. But yeah, she's so fun. It's like wearing different hats, really, because I'll have to like have my writing hat on to like it, which is a very uh, I don't know how to like logical. Like I'm in the writers' room, I feel like I'm different than when I'm
Mhm.
in the booth recording.
Let
When I'm in the booth recording, I can be a free Willy, free monster, and I'm not thinking about writing really. I'm just improvising and kind of, getting into my body and like that's my performer brain. Whereas in the writer's room, I'm like ugh, logical, you know, jokes, mathematics,
let
patterns.
let me ask you too, and I guess this is another struggle for someone who's writing and acting. I mean, I guess even in a sense, directing too. Have you found
Mhm.
yourself ever while you're in the booth recording and with even with other folks and listening to what you wrote, and then all of a sudden, like as either you're reading a line that you wrote or somebody else is reading a line, you're
Mhm.
like, oh wait a second, and like you almost have that like directorial moment.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
ever
all the
collage with
time.
that?
Absolutely. All the time. Yeah, I can hear it because I can hear when it's not landing. I can hear when the joke is not making sense, or if
Mhm.
it's come out of my mouth and I'm like, well, that sounded weird. Can we change the line there? It is a muscle, I'm working multiple muscles at the same time. And yeah, I do have to like kind of switch back and forth. Um, so yeah, it's interesting.
And I mean the other castmates. I mean, obviously they're enjoying what you're writing for them too. But then I guess while you're in the booth too, like they may throw you some feedback for their characters too. Because again, there's not every production do the cast and the writers really get to connect. But you kind of like serve the
Right.
bridge now for this show.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. Because usually when I go in to record for Ren, I just go, and I'm not really like analyzing the script there because, usually there will be writers in there, or Matt, or
Yeah,
Ben will be in the booth on the other side. So they're kind of in the directorial brain. So I would never go in.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Because you're giving the other cast members like a little insight to that world too. Maybe that they always don't always get a hold of.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, sure. When I'm in the writer's room, yeah,
Yeah.
I can hear. Yes, I can be like, well, that might, be a little tough for the writer, for the performer to, you know, it's a mouthful basically. Like I feel like this could be streamlined. But the writers room, we've been so blessed to have such great writers on Craig that I got to work with, like Jeff, um, who was amazing. And then I went to write on our spin-off show, Jessica's Little World,
Mhm.
Jessica's Big Little World. So I got to be story editor on that show. And that's been announced.
Mm-hmm.
Getting made. And yeah, Shanae and Chanel Gibbs, we had twin sisters who were amazing. And I just fell in love with, and that show is with Tiffany Ford and Matt and Ben as producers. And yeah, that was really fun.
So I mean,
family environment. We had so much fun writing together.
So the other thing that's been announced, and I know and for everybody, we cannot talk much about it, but the big news that came out at San Diego Comic-Con is that you'll be taking on the role of Babs Bunny. So before we even go into Babs Bunny and this role in Tiny Toons, growing up, what was like your favorite cartoon?
Oh my gosh. Growing up, I was a little monster. I liked things like Ren and Stimpy. Yeah. I don't want to show my age too much, but like, yeah. I mean, I definitely grew up in the Tiny Toons world, Tiny Toons, Looney Tunes, Animaniacs. Then on the Nickelodeon side, yeah, Ren and Stimpy, Doug, Rugrats. Those were all like my favorite shows. You'll know how old I am now if I say DuckTales. Did anybody watch DuckTales?
There's a new one that came on 6 years ago, 4 years ago.
Okay, yeah, so that's when I watched.
Yeah, you're 26.
Like, yeah,
exactly. And everything's on streaming now too. So there you go.
I'm very young.
Yes.
But yeah, those were all my favorites growing up. Watched them all the time.
Someone just wrote the best cartoons, and they really were the best cartoons.
Oh, good.
So, and for anybody that discovers any of these cartoons at any point in their lives, you know, Animaniacs, those Disney shows, Tiny Toon Adventures, they really are. They were made at probably like if you look at animation, you know, like the 60s was a really big time for animation, television animation. The 70s and the 80s were interesting. They were the 70s, like, everybody was solving a mystery in the 70s.
Exactly.
The 80s, people were selling toys, and then
then boom,
there was this explosion of like all this really great content. So
so much. I feel so lucky to have grown up in that era. It was like the golden age of cartoons.
Yeah,
it just blew up.
And so a show like Tiny Toon Adventures,
I know,
I mean, which was I mean, I guess at that time too, a lot of those shows were like a great experiment too. Everybody's like, Steven Spielberg's doing Looney Tunes on TV. What the heck is this? You know, like this isn't right. Even DuckTales. I remember when DuckTales came out, people are like Disney's doing a TV show. They only do feature films, you know.
Exactly.
But who knew, right?
Yeah, but then they blew up.
Absolutely.
And like everybody, we loved it. We loved it.
So Tiny Toons at San Diego Comic-Con, we know Animaniacs has come back. Tiny Toons is now returning, and I guess you were announced as the voice of Babs Bunny.
I know it still feels weird to me as well. It feels like, because you know, leading up to that, I was like, oh my gosh, is this happening? Is this real? Is it real? Is it real? Is it real? Is all I kept saying to myself. And then Comic-Con came around and they were like, would you like to come to Comic-Con? And I was like, what? Had never been to Comic-Con. That was my first time, you know, going to Comic-Con. I had no idea it was such a big event. I knew it was a big thing, but also just like, I didn't know how big. You know, as soon as I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people waiting in tents and setting up and staying outside for days. I was like, oh my goodness. So that was really, really fun. I felt very fortunate to have that experience. I'll never forget it. And yeah, it was so fun. It was like, you know, getting announced and getting to be on a panel. I took a great picture of just like from the table, like of the whole audience. And, you know, of course it's nerve-wracking because you are being announced as this character who people adore,
Mm-hmm.
including myself. And this legend of a voice actress has been, for as long as I can remember, the voice up. So it's like a lot of pressure, you know. But then when I got there, I was like, I don't want to think about all that. I don't want to think how I'm going to be received by people.
Mm-hmm.
I just went outside and went on stage and was like, hello, here I am. This is happening. And, you know, luckily everyone was like very receptive, very warm reception, you know, because you never know how people are going to respond to the news of a replacement.
Mm-hmm. Now,
can I call it a replacement? Not a replacement, but you know, a new.
Have you ever gotten to meet Tress MacNeille, or?
I haven't, and I would love to. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
I hope that happens at some point. Maybe we could sing a duet together.
That would be
one day.
Are you a singer too?
Stage. I love to sing.
Ooh, nice. Well,
I'm not a great singer in my regular voice. Because I was saying, I grew up singing in choirs and stuff, and like grew up with a piano in the home, family singing all the time. My mom is a singer. She is where I get my voice from. She can belt, and I'm talking deep. She can go deep and high. And yeah, so I grew up with musical influences in my life. And so I love to sing, but I can only sound good in character. Not as me. If you ask me to sing right now, I will crumble.
And we won't ask you to sing in character right now because we don't want to spoil a surprise for when the cartoon comes.
Oh, good.
Good. So that's good. But when you auditioned for this new Tiny Toons, did you know what you were doing? Did they tell you we're doing Tiny Toons, or you know?
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about that? I don't know.
I think so. I don't know. Yes, I knew what. Yeah, I've already talked about it. I knew what show it was, and I was like, "This is incredible." I think no, yeah, yeah. I immediately was like, "Well, what is the Oh, I think I could share this. I auditioned for a different role first, and got a call back for that role. Okay. I auditioned for 2 roles, and got a call back for Not Babs Bunny. And so I sent in my call back, but to even get a call back was incredible. So I did my callback. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm doing a callback. They asked for this, but they just said, can she do it faster? Can she speed up the pace and the rhythm on it? And I was like, oh, yes. Also, this was the only audition that I've ever gotten a voice coach for.
Okay.
Yes, I coached with Robin Reed, and because I was like, I want to do really well on this. So like, I'm going to take the extra step. For everything else, I just was like winging it, you know, improvising in my closet on the floor. But for this, I met with Robin Reed, and she really, you know, walked me through, you know, the audition. And I'm trying to think if I auditioned. Yeah, okay. So was that for the? Oh, I did both. Okay. Anyway, and so yeah, she walked me through, and it was really great. She edited it all together for me, and then sent it in. Oh, okay. Now I'm forgetting the direct. Doesn't matter. Either way, I got a call back for Not Babs, and then I was like, "This is incredible." And then, yeah. However long later, found out that I got a call from my agent, and with my manager on 3-way in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
It was a nightmare of an experience for obvious reasons, but also because I'd been trapped in my studio apartment by myself, you know, for so long. And so, yeah, I got this call, and it was my manager and my agent on the phone, and they said, "You're not going to believe this. Brace yourself. Are you ready?" And I was like, "What is happening?" And then they told me that I booked 20. And I was like, "What?" That's not even, it was a surprise, like a surprise to me, because I didn't even get a call back for that role.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like weird, you know? But so yeah, I was like, this is, and then I still didn't even believe it, you know, when I went in for like our first session. I went in and I was like, ugh, I'm probably gonna get cut. I was like, hopefully my voice sounds the same, and like I sound the same in the record as I do, you know, on at home on my phone and on my computer. And I just was like convinced. I was like, there's no way this is gonna move all the way forward. Fast forward to Comic-Con, it's happening. Oh my gosh.
Now for Tiny Toons, are you guys recording individually or are you recording as a whole group?
Little bit of both.
Got you. Because again, I think a show like Tiny Toons, you know, you need again that improv thing going there, working off of one another, you know, and certainly that was the original series too.
Yeah.
All the voice actors that they had on that.
I know. I miss having like full ensemble records with like producers in studio too, you know. But yeah, we've been doing a little bit of both.
And I guess for everybody watching, and because I do want to just address a couple of things that people said, Tiny Toons is going to be coming. We just don't know when yet. So I assume there'll be more reveals as time goes on. I mean, there was some great artwork that did come out. Someone just mentioned from the original. Obviously I know Hampton's in the new show. Unfortunately, Don Messick is not around anymore. So Hampton the pig.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see. And I'm
interesting.
Some of that. But I just want to quickly, Chantel Williams says your energy is amazing. And that's probably why they because you
thanks, Chantel Williams.
You know, Renaissance for animation. Yeah, I'm just going back here. A lot of things about some Brandon says congratulations. I've been a fan of Tiny Toon Adventures for here it is. I've been a fan of Tiny Toon Adventures for 4 years since your voice acting for Babs Bunny, which congratulations. Do you have a favorite Tiny Toons episode?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question, and I would not ever be able to think of one off the top of my head right now. I know I went on a binge watch like before Comic-Con because I was like, and so much of it is like still so funny, like so many just and like I was like, this show is still like it could still be here today. Yeah, I can't even think of one specific episode. There go the crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets are like,
you know, the one thing
here we come, our time to shine.
No, Baby Plucky for the win.
Have one, Mike?
What's that? Do I have a favorite one?
Favorite?
I do. Matt Casper just said Baby Plucky. He likes Baby, and I like Baby Plucky. I thought those were fun episodes.
Yeah.
I would have to say, and you know, you got me a little bit excited when you mentioned it. Well, I love the movie that they did. How I spent my vacation. And another episode that I really there are two episodes I enjoyed. Like there's an American Tail episode. It was a flea that was living on Furball the cat. But the connection in a minute, which goes to you. And then I also like Journey to the Center of Acme Acres. Well, that's where. So the connections between that, and you mentioned it too. So maybe that was like spoiler. Those were all musicals.
What did I say?
Well, those were all musicals. So you said you like to sing. So maybe we may get some musical episodes of Tiny Toons. That would be awesome.
You didn't hear that from me.
But it's cool because all the Warner Brothers shows, they all have music in it. Animaniacs has great music. And again, that goes with that whole Renaissance time of the 90s. And I think that was what was magical about like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs was the music, you know, whether it be the theme songs and then just the songs that they had, you know, the composers that wrote all the music for those shows that made those things memorable. So, I mean, hopefully we hear you sing.
I mean, I think we all like have the theme songs, like the, you know, titles like in our brains forever, right? Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, like Looney Tunes, all those shows is like, oh my gosh, those songs, like the intro songs were just like legendary, you know, they're going to be ingrained in our brains always.
Randy Rogel did a lot of the music. Sarah Jean just said Randy Rogel. Yeah, so yeah, the music was all that great, and the stories were great. The comedy was great. The cast were great, and I know, I mean, getting to chat with you tonight, we see the energy that you're going to bring to the show. You know, I can't wait to see who's there and see how you're going to be interacting with people. Yes.
Hey, I'm excited. Yeah, the fans have been so nice, so friendly. Everyone's been super supportive, which I thank you. Thank you, everybody, because, you know, as artists, it's kind of like we're putting ourselves out there a little bit, you know, it's kind of like it's Twitter's a scary place, let me just tell you. And so going out on Twitter and opening yourself up to anyone's judgments, critiques, fact checking, blah blah blah, is like, okay, you know.
Yeah, it's a crazy world. Technology is good, but technology has its drawbacks as well, you know.
Right. Yeah. And so I just feel very grateful for all the support so far. And it's so exciting to see everybody so excited for the show to come back. And yeah, I hope to keep that, you know, momentum and love going and until it comes out. Yeah. Very cool.
We're all excited, and then because I know we're gonna wrap up here in a sec. For people who want to find you out there in the world, I guess you have a Twitter. You mentioned you have Twitter. If people want to check out some of the other stuff that you're doing, where's the best places that they can reach out and follow you, find you, etc.?
On Instagram, I'm Ashleigh Crystal, ASHLEIGH Crystal with a C. And on Twitter, I am also Ashleigh Crystal, but with an @sign for the A.
Oh, cool.
I did that to confuse people.
That's good. That's a good thing. So nice. So Tiny Toon Adventures, Craig of the Creek, and what was the name of the spinoff show again from Craig of the Creek that's coming?
Jessica's Big Little World.
And so that's coming soon. So you're like all over the place. This is great. So
yes.
Everybody who tuned in tonight, go check out Ashleigh's Twitter and Instagram. And if you Incredicon, follow us on Incredicon. I definitely want to see about getting you out here to do a convention in New York. That'd be exciting.
Okay. Maybe I'll have my chance to go to New York finally.
There you go. Here you go. Yeah. So everybody who tuned in, thank you again, Ashleigh. Thank you so much. If you just have a minute once we end, just to wrap up, you and I, and we'll see everybody again on IncrediChat. Ashleigh, thank you so much once again for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone.